Last night, a 45-year-old woman said something to me that stayed with me long after the conversation ended. She looked me in the eye and said, "I spent my whole life trying to be the perfect woman for my partners. And in the end, the only man who remembered me with genuine love was the one I could just be myself with. No mask, no performance." That one sentence holds the key to everything I want to share with you today. After more than 20 years of working in emotional intelligence and listening to thousands of women on their healing journeys, I've discovered a truth that quietly challenges everything we've been taught about love. We were told that to be unforgettable, a woman must be flawless, always composed, always striving to be special. But neuroscience tells us a different story. When a man truly falls in love, his brain doesn't hold on to what most women believe is important. While you're busy trying to be the best version of yourself, working hard to impress him, his nervous system is responding to something else entirely. And once you understand what truly gets imprinted on his emotional memory, you'll finally see why so many relationships fade and why a few rare ones last a lifetime. Because it's not about what you do, it's about how he feels when he's around you. Today, I want to share with you 5 powerful aspects that leave a lasting imprint on a man's emotional memory when he falls deeply and honestly in love. And let me say this clearly, none of them have anything to do with your appearance, your career success, or your sexual performance.
This is about something much deeper. Your ability to create a sense of emotional safety inside him. Each of these 5 aspects is grounded in solid neuroscience, specifically in how the male brain processes emotion differently, and what truly creates a deep, stable, long-lasting connection, the kind that remains even after the initial passion fades. And here's a gentle warning. When this truly clicks for you, you might feel a wave of frustration at first. You'll start to wonder how much time you've spent on strategies that never really worked. But right after that, you'll feel a sense of deep relief because you'll realize something life-changing. You never needed to become someone else to be unforgettable. The first aspect is what I call the magnetism of authenticity. And no, it's not about being loud, dramatic, or the center of attention. It's about a quiet confidence, a calm, grounded energy that flows from a woman who is truly at peace with herself. When you walk into a room with no need to prove anything, when your presence alone speaks volumes, something in his brain responds instinctively. His limbic system, the part that governs emotion, trust, and safety, recognizes your internal harmony. He feels it, and more importantly, he feels safe. He doesn't feel the need to impress you. He doesn't feel judged or pressured. He feels at ease in your presence, and that's what draws him in. When you walk into a room with nothing to prove, when your presence speaks for itself, something instinctive and profound is triggered in his brain. His limbic system, the part of his brain responsible for emotion, safety, and stability, picks up on your inner balance, and that's what draws him in. He senses it. He doesn't need to exhaust himself proving his worth to you. He can just be. This kind of authenticity can't be faked. It's not a trick. It's not a performance. It's born from walking through your own storms and making the powerful choice to accept yourself, exactly as you are. When a woman stops fighting herself, when she stops hiding her flaws and starts embracing them, she begins to radiate something that words can't describe. Something that is felt, not explained. I remember one client, heartbroken after her relationship ended. "I was always there for him," she said. "I tried so hard to be perfect, to look flawless. But after months of deep inner healing, something shifted. One day, she met someone in a bookstore. They were both browsing the plants section. We talked about plants for an hour," she told me. "I wasn't trying to impress him. I was just present." Now, 3 years later, they're still together. She didn't change her looks. She changed her relationship with herself. She no longer needed validation from anyone else to feel worthy. And in that very moment, she became magnetic. Not because she chased love, but because she stopped chasing it and started radiating it. And this is where so many women are misled. They believe confidence comes from pretending, acting strong on the outside, hoping it will someday feel real on the inside. But the male brain, especially its deep emotional core, recognizes authenticity. You can't fool him. He feels the gap between the woman you present and the woman you truly are. The truth is, the deepest emotional imprint is left by women who've developed something rare: emotional authority.
These women know who they are. They know their boundaries. They don't apologize for existing. And when a man encounters that energy, he remembers it because it's rare and it's powerful. This kind of authority doesn't show up in big declarations. It reveals itself in the smallest moments, the quiet determination in your walk, the way you respond with calm, not chaos, the peace you hold in your silence, the ease with which you stop seeking approval. This isn't arrogance. It's not hardness. It's vulnerability transformed. It's the quiet, steady power of a woman who's faced life's storms and now trusts herself to weather anything. And now we come to the most fascinating part. The male brain is constantly and unconsciously assessing a woman's emotional stability. This isn't something he thinks about. It's not conscious. It happens through mirror neurons, the cells in our brain that allow us to feel the emotional state of another person. When a man is around a woman who has developed emotional grounding, his entire nervous system relaxes. He senses that this woman won't fall apart under pressure, and that is deeply attractive to him. Now, the second aspect has to do with the quality of your presence when you're with him. We live in a world of fragmented attention. Our minds bounce between notifications, obligations, distractions. But if you can create what I call full magnetic presence, if your attention is undivided, if you can truly be here, in this moment, you give a man something rare, something his nervous system doesn't experience often. Let me share something that changed my view on this forever. In a session, a man once told me that what he remembered most about his ex wasn't her looks or her intelligence. It was the way she looked at him when he spoke.
He said, "I felt like I was the only person in the universe." She wasn't thinking about what to say next. She wasn't checking her phone. She was just there, truly there. From a neurological perspective, when someone feels truly seen and heard, the brain releases oxytocin, the bonding hormone. But something even deeper happens in a world where everyone's talking but few are truly listening, where conversations have become surface-level exchanges. Having someone give you their full attention is like water in the desert. And I want you to know, presence doesn't mean being passive. It doesn't mean shrinking yourself. On the contrary, it's the ability to create a conscious space where true connection can happen. It's a steady gaze without rush. It's questions that go beneath the surface. It's quiet moments that aren't awkward, but where feelings can grow. One client once told me that the way she connected with men completely changed. She used to always worry about what to say, how I looked, how to please him. It was exhausting. And now, I just listen. I'm fully present. I ask honest questions, and I show up as myself. The responses she received were remarkable. She confirmed what science already knows. When we are truly present, we activate a sense of safety in the other person. The nervous system calms down because it senses no threat.
But let me be clear. Full presence doesn't mean agreeing with everything he says. It doesn't mean suppressing your voice. Quite the opposite. True presence includes the ability to disagree respectfully, to set boundaries without disconnecting, and to speak honestly without manipulation. Men, especially those who have lived enough to know the difference between superficial and real relationships, remember these moments. Because in a world full of noise, someone who is truly present leaves an unforgettable mark. Now let me share the third aspect, one that leaves a deep and lasting imprint on a man's emotional memory. Your ability to be a safe emotional refuge. And no, this isn't about giving him financial or material security. It's something far more powerful. The feeling that he can be emotionally open with you without fear of being judged. You see, men carry a deep, often hidden inner world. But from a young age, they're taught to hide it, to stay strong, to suppress their emotions, to never appear weak. Over time, many of them build walls, even from themselves. But when a man meets a woman who can hold space for his vulnerability, without correcting him, without minimizing his feelings, without judging his fears, something extraordinary happens in his nervous system. The oldest part of his brain sends out a signal. I'm safe here. I can be myself here. And that feeling, it becomes one of the most sacred memories he carries from a relationship. Because in your presence, he experienced what so few men do, to be imperfect and still be loved. But let me be very clear. Being an emotional refuge does not mean being his therapist. It doesn't mean carrying the weight of his emotions or solving his problems. It means having the emotional strength to stay present while he feels. It means allowing space for him to be human without losing yourself in the process and without trying to fix everything.
That kind of space-taking and emotional holding, it requires deep emotional maturity. And that's exactly why it's so rare and so powerful. It's the difference between reacting from your old wounds and responding from a place of compassion. It's the ability to listen, not to fix, not to judge, not to advise, but to be fully present while still staying grounded in your own center. One client shared a story that perfectly captures this. Her partner came home one night completely drained after a long and difficult day. She didn't try to cheer him up. She didn't offer advice. She simply looked at him and said, "I can see it's been a hard day. Do you want to tell me what happened?" When he opened up, she didn't interrupt. She didn't try to reframe it. She just held the space for him to be. No fixing, no analyzing, just presence. Later, he told her, "I've never felt so safe expressing my true feelings." And from a neurological perspective, that wasn't just a sweet moment. It was a transformation. His brain released oxytocin, the bonding hormone. His cortisol levels dropped. and his parasympathetic nervous system activated, the system responsible for calm, rest, and the deep sense of emotional safety. And the most powerful part? It was all triggered by her presence. So please remember this. If you can hold space for a man's vulnerability without feeling threatened by it, without mistaking it for weakness, you're sending him the most powerful message of all. You don't have to be perfect to be loved.
Now, we move to the fourth aspect. It's quiet. It's simple, but it leaves a lasting emotional imprint. It's found in the small, unconditional gestures of care, the ones that expect no praise, no recognition, and no reward. I'm not talking about grand romantic gestures. I'm talking about the subtle moments that whisper, "I'm thinking of you," even when you're not here. A cup of tea waiting after a hard day. A note tucked into his jacket. Remembering the little detail he once shared and bringing it up weeks later. From a neurological perspective, these unexpected acts activate the brain's reward system more powerfully than planned declarations of love. Why? Because they're genuine, because they're unforced, because they say, without words, "I'm with you, even when you can't see me." It can be a short message wishing him luck before a big meeting, or handing him his favorite coffee without saying a word, or a glance, one that says more than 1,000 sentences. These small, real moments burn themselves into his emotional memory because behind them is true attentiveness, not calculation. That's why you should never underestimate the power of what's done out of love, not out of a need to prove yourself. It's exactly these simple, sincere gestures that often become his most treasured memories of you. It's in the way you casually bring up his neck pain and ask how it's feeling a few days later. When you send him a photo because something reminded you of a conversation you once had. When you notice he's stressed and make his favorite herbal tea without him having to say a word. When you listen to him talk about his projects and weeks later ask a specific question that shows you truly listened and remembered. And now we arrive at something essential, something I want you to feel, not just understand.
These little gestures, they must never be strategic. They can't come from calculation, from wanting something in return, or from trying to score points in the relationship. Their power lies entirely in their sincerity, in your genuine attentiveness, in the quiet way you care, in your desire to truly see the man in front of you and to contribute to his well-being, not for praise, not for approval, but simply because you care. In every lasting relationship, these kinds of gestures are what I call emotional deposits into the heart account. They may not spark dramatic reactions, they may even go unnoticed at times, but they do something far more powerful. They create a quiet, steady, deeply rooted sense of love. Not performative, not conditional, just reliable. A man once told me why he decided to propose to his partner. It wasn't because of an anniversary or some dramatic moment. It was a regular Tuesday. He'd had a terrible week, exhausted, stressed, drained. When he came home, she greeted him with his favorite tea, kissed him on the forehead, and said, "Dinner will be ready in 20 minutes. In that simple moment, he realized, for 2 years, I felt cared for, without ever having to ask for it or earn it. That moment, that quiet, ordinary, unremarkable moment, was all the proof he needed that true love,
the kind that stays, is made of quiet, everyday, invisible acts. From a neurological perspective, each of those small gestures activated his brain's reward system, not in a dramatic surge of dopamine like a grand surprise, but gently, consistently, every time he looked at her.
And over time, he linked her presence to a deep sense of safety. But there's something you need to know. If those gestures are driven by hidden motives, they lose all their power. The male brain is highly sensitive to inauthenticity. If your attention is laced with expectations, if it feels like a trade or a form of control, he'll sense it, and he'll begin to close off. I remember a woman once asked me, "Isn't this just slipping back into the outdated role of the woman who takes care of everyone but herself?" And I told her, just as I'll tell you now, the difference is immense. This kind of care doesn't come from obligation. It's not expected. It's not demanded. It comes from a free choice, because you want to love like that. Because this kind of love fills you. It doesn't drain you. Mature men, the ones who've lived enough to know the difference between intensity and consistency, appreciate that steady attention. They know that real connection isn't built on grand gestures, but in the small, quiet moments that don't need applause. And now we come to the final, and perhaps most important point. The fifth element that becomes etched into a man's emotional memory is your ability to create what I call authentic shared joy. I don't mean being funny or trying to constantly entertain him. I mean something deeper. Your ability to find lightness in the chaos of everyday life, in the midst of obligations, stress, and the weight of being an adult, to still create moments of joy, moments where you both get to breathe.
Because as time goes on, life inevitably becomes more complex. The pressure builds, and if there's no shared joy, no mutual exhale, we slip into survival mode. But when a man has a woman by his side who can still find a spark of laughter on hard days, who can enjoy the little things without bitterness, who can be playful without losing her dignity, something almost magical happens in his nervous system. Shared laughter literally synchronizes the brain. It's a scientific fact. When two people laugh together, their brain waves align. The nervous system interprets that as safety, closeness, and connection. And it's those very moments that become anchors, anchors for love. They become the memories that last even through hard times, reminders of how you laughed at the silly things, shared your own little inside jokes, how you existed together with lightness. But I want you to understand something. This kind of joy doesn't come from performing. It doesn't arise when you're trying to be someone else. It comes naturally when both of you feel safe enough to be fully yourselves. When you know you can laugh at your own flaws, when you don't need to be perfect, when you realize that not everything has to be serious.
I remember a couple who had been married for over 15 years. The husband once said to me, "You know what I love most about her? She always finds a way to bring joy. Even on the hardest days, she'll look at me and do something ridiculous, and I laugh like a kid again." That's it. That's emotional intelligence. The ability to create a space where love and laughter can live side by side. To show that life, even when heavy, can still be beautiful. That love doesn't need to be proven, it just needs to be lived. And here's what neuroscience tells us. When you share moments of true joy with someone, your brain doesn't just release endorphins and dopamine. It also strengthens the neuropathways associated with positive emotional memory. These moments become what neuroscientists call highly emotionally charged memories, the kind the brain holds on to because they're linked to deep, meaningful joy. That's why, even years later, a man might not remember all your deep conversations or the challenges you overcame together, but he'll remember the moments when you laughed until your stomachs hurt. The spontaneous lightness, the childlike joy, free from judgment, free from the weight of social expectations. Men who have lived enough to value emotional stability deeply crave these moments of emotional relief. They carry responsibility, have experienced disappointment, and know how heavy life can get. Meeting a woman who can create moments of genuine joy is like finding an oasis, a place where they can lay down their armor and simply be happy. And now, I want you to recognize something essential. These 5 aspects that imprint themselves into a man's emotional memory, they are not tricks, not tactics for seduction. They are the natural result of your own inner growth, your ability to be present with yourself and to connect from a place of inner wholeness. And this isn't about changing yourself to win a man. It's about developing the kind of inner richness that makes you feel whole. And that wholeness naturally attracts the kind of man who can recognize and cherish it. Because here's the truth I've learned after years of working closely with women. The men who are truly worthy of your time and emotional energy are the ones who have walked their own inner path. They aren't looking for convenience. They're looking for a true life companion, someone real, someone deep, someone alive inside. But there's something you must understand deeply. Cultivating these 5 qualities is not a strategy to win someone over. It's your path to your own fulfillment. Because when you embody authenticity, emotional safety, presence, genuine care, and shared joy, you don't just become magnetic to emotionally mature men. You become someone you want to spend your life with. I've seen too many women so focused on getting love that they forget to ask themselves the most important question. What kind of love do I truly want to receive? And in that question lies a beautiful paradoxical truth. When you shift your focus from being chosen to becoming the kind of woman you deeply admire, when you cultivate these inner qualities not to impress anyone, but because they fulfill you, something powerful begins to happen.
And if a man doesn't recognize these qualities in you, if he's more drawn to surface-level games, power plays, or emotional shortcuts, then understand this clearly. He's simply not ready for the kind of love your soul is calling for. Because real love, the kind that endures, the kind that heals and holds, is never built on tactics or performance. It doesn't ask you to shrink yourself, to chase, to prove, to perfect. Real love grows quietly in the spaces where you can be fully yourself, where your softness is safe, where your laughter is welcome, where your quiet acts of care are felt deeply, even when no one is watching. It's in those silent, everyday exchanges, a glance, a touch, a remembered detail, where love becomes something unshakable. Not loud, but lasting. Not dramatic, but rooted. And when you meet a man with whom you can build that kind of love, a love nourished by presence, by truth, by mutual respect and emotional closeness, you'll understand something profound. You'll see why those 5 qualities aren't just things he remembers. They are the very reason he can't forget you. Because in a world of noise, you gave him something rare. the quiet safety to be fully himself. And in return, he saw all of you and chose to stay.
And if a man doesn't recognize these qualities in you, if he's more drawn to surface-level games, power plays, or emotional shortcuts, then understand this clearly. He's simply not ready for the kind of love your soul is calling for. Because real love, the kind that endures, the kind that heals and holds, is never built on tactics or performance. It doesn't ask you to shrink yourself, to chase, to prove, to perfect. Real love grows quietly in the spaces where you can be fully yourself, where your softness is safe, where your laughter is welcome, where your quiet acts of care are felt deeply, even when no one is watching. It's in those silent, everyday exchanges, a glance, a touch, a remembered detail, where love becomes something unshakable, not loud, but lasting, not dramatic, but rooted. And when you meet a man with whom you can build that kind of love, a love nourished by presence, by truth, by mutual respect and emotional closeness, you'll understand something profound. You'll see why those 5 qualities aren't just things he remembers. They are the very reason he can't forget you. Because in a world of noise, you gave him something rare, the quiet safety to be fully himself. And in return, he saw all of you and chose to stay. Because these 5 qualities, authenticity, presence, emotional safety, genuine care, and shared joy, represent the most sacred offering in human connection, the rare gift of being yourself in a world that constantly asks you to be someone else, the quiet power of being cared for without condition, the life-changing experience of being fully seen and accepted, the freedom to be vulnerable without fear, and the simple, soul-deep joy of sharing life with someone who truly understands you.
But before I end, let me leave you with one truth that I share with every woman who has ever asked me, how do I attract a love that lasts? There is a monumental difference between seeking love out of emptiness and welcoming love from a place of inner fullness. When you seek love from a place of lack, every relationship becomes an attempt to prove you're enough, to patch your wounds, to feel whole. But when you make space for love from your own wholeness, everything changes. You're no longer chasing love to be completed, you're inviting love to be shared. And in that space, you attract not just a partner, but a mirror, a companion, a home. Because fullness recognizes fullness, and love, real, steady, lasting love, is never about finding someone to complete you. It's about meeting someone who sees your completeness and chooses to stand beside it. This isn't just a poetic concept, it's grounded in neuroscience. When you seek love from a place of lack, your nervous system remains stuck in survival mode. You become hyper-aware, constantly scanning. Am I being valued enough? Am I safe? Do I matter here? That state of inner tension keeps your brain on high alert, making it nearly impossible to feel true emotional closeness. Because real intimacy only blooms in safety, and safety can't exist where you're bracing for rejection or measuring your worth by how someone else responds.
But when you love from fullness, your nervous system softens. You're calm, open, and truly receptive. You see the other person as they are, instead of casting them in the role of your unmet needs. You respond rather than react.
You choose with intention, instead of reenacting the same old survival patterns. And from this inner wholeness, those 5 unforgettable qualities begin to bloom naturally within you. Authenticity, because you no longer have to wear a mask just to feel worthy. Presence, because you're not entering connection hoping to fill a void. Emotional refuge, because your own stability doesn't depend on fixing or managing someone else's emotions. Sincere care, because your self-love is so full it spills outward without effort. And real joy, not the kind that performs, but the kind that rises when you're at peace with life, in all its chaos, all its beauty, and all its imperfection. Let me tell you something that happened to me years ago. Something small on the surface, but it changed how I see life forever. I was walking through a quiet park one late afternoon when I noticed an older woman sitting by the water, feeding ducks from a little paper bag. There was something about her, a kind of quiet calm that made me stop. We started talking. She told me she had been widowed for 5 years after spending 4 decades with the love of her life. But it wasn't the story that moved me. It was how she told it. No bitterness, no self-pity, no forced smile trying to pretend it didn't hurt. Just presence. A stillness that wasn't hollow, it was deep. It was peace. And when I gently asked her how she found that kind of serenity, she looked at me and said words I've never forgotten. When you stop looking for someone to fill your emptiness and start celebrating the fullness of who you already are, everything changes. Love comes, but you don't need it to survive. You enjoy it because it adds to something beautiful that's already there. That is what real love is meant to do. Not rescue you, not complete you, but join you in your already full, already radiant life. And you know what? That moment stayed with me because it made me think of all the women I've guided over the years, the ones who built the kind of love that doesn't fade, the kind that deepens with time. They weren't always the most beautiful by society standards. They weren't the ones who had perfect pasts or knew all the right things to say.
That's why inner work isn't optional. It's foundational. Not for them, but for you. So that what you offer in love is not a mask, but a mirror of your wholeness. That's the difference between technique and transformation. Techniques can create attraction. They might even land you in a relationship. But they can't sustain love. Not the kind that lasts. Not the kind that heals. Not the kind that builds over time. Only what you build within yourself can form the foundation of something most people overlook. Women who reach this level of emotional maturity don't just attract better men. They become better partners. You begin to love with more freedom. You offer closeness without losing. You become vulnerable, but never dependent. Give care, but don't burn out. You surrender, but never abandon your wholeness. That is maturity. To carry and nurture a relationship with depth, not because you're afraid to be alone, not because you're trying to meet someone else's expectations, because you're living from truth. You know who you are. You honor what you want, and you never forget. When a man truly falls in love, remember your accomplishments. He won't remember your techniques. He will remember how he felt in your presence, your calmness, your warmth, your ability to truly be there. That becomes his emotional home. That's where real love grows. Not the kind that burns hot and fades, but the kind that deepens. The kind that stays steady through both joy and struggle. And when you no longer use these qualities to impress, but simply live them because they are who you've become,
something beautiful happens. Man finds you. You don't have to chase him. You don't have to prove anything. He recognizes you because he's been becoming someone who can see a woman like you. And together, you build the kind of love that was worth waiting for. You won't have to convince him. You won't have to perform or persuade.
Because now you know your heart is not available to anyone who doesn't come with presence, with intention, and with the capacity to meet you, not just at your surface, but at your depth. And this brings us to a crucial insight. Those 5 aspects only become lasting in a man's emotional memory if they come from your authentic self, not from a performance. The brain knows. It registers instantly whether there's harmony between what you show and what you actually feel. That's why you can't fake authenticity. You have to live it. You can't pretend to be present if you're disconnected from your own body, numb to your own breath, distracted from your own heart. You can't offer refuge if you haven't calmed your own inner storms. You can't give sincere care if it's born out of fear or duty or the quiet hope that maybe this time it will be enough. And you can't share true joy if it's covering up an unspoken sadness, if you're smiling to hide your ache, if you're performing lightness when what you truly long for is to be held in your depth. This is the invisible language of love, the language beneath the words, the one that reveals who you are even before you speak. Because a man who is emotionally attuned, he feels all of this. Not consciously, perhaps, but in the way his body relaxes around you or tenses, and how he draws closer or pulls away without knowing why.
He will see you, and he won't run from your authenticity. He will honor it. So please, remember this. True love isn't something you chase. It's not something you have to earn or capture or hold on to with fear. True love arrives when 2 people have made peace within themselves and recognize in each other the strength they've already built inside. It's the kind of love that never asks you to shrink, never demands that you prove yourself. It's a relationship where you are free and still choose each other every single day, not because you need to, but because you want to. Because the growth you experience together feels like coming home. And when you experience this kind of love, when you are truly seen and deeply loved exactly as you are, you'll never settle for anything less again. So as you read this, or hear these words, please remember, this isn't a story about how to find a man. It's a story about how to find your way back to yourself. Because when you do, when you come home to who you truly are, love becomes the natural result, not the goal.
You start attracting a different kind of man, one who has also walked through fire, who has done his own healing, who recognizes real when he sees it. It's like tuning into a higher emotional frequency. Only those who've done the inner work can hear it clearly. These are the men who value authenticity more than perfection, presence more than constant availability, emotional safety more than drama, genuine care more than grand displays, and true joy more than shallow entertainment. And when 2 people like that meet, 2 people who have done the inner work, who no longer seek to be completed, but to be met,
something almost magical unfolds. There's no more chasing, no more performing, no more exhausting tug-of-war like in immature relationships. Instead, love becomes a space of mutual elevation, a sanctuary for growth, a place where vulnerability is met with safety, and where both the ordinary and the extraordinary are celebrated side by side. I remember a woman, 48 years old, who came to me after 2 years of deep inner work. One day she said something I'll never forget. For the first time in my life, I'm in a relationship where I don't have to choose between being myself and being that sentence. It captures everything. It's what happens when you meet someone who doesn't just like the idea of love, but who honors your wholeness, who recognizes the quiet power of those 5 emotional imprints you carry, and who is ready not to fix you, not to own you, but to walk beside you.
But they had something unshakable. They had found that same inner anchor that radiated from that elderly woman in the park. A quiet power, a deep knowing of their worth, and a peace that couldn't be taken away, even by heartbreak. I want you to truly understand. When you develop that kind of inner fullness, not only do you attract healthier, more emotionally available relationships, you also gain the wisdom to recognize the kind of love that actually deserves a place in your life, accepting emotional crumbs, because you know your soul was never meant to starve. You stop staying in relationships that ask you to betray your values, your voice, or your softness just to feel wanted. You stop repeating patterns that drain you and start choosing only what nourishes you. Because now you're not chasing love. You're choosing it from a place of clarity, of strength, of quiet self-trust. And that, my dear, is what makes you unforgettable. Not your perfection, not your performance, but the courage to live as your whole self. In a world that keeps asking, let that be the love story you write with your life. Not one of proving, chasing, or performing, but of becoming. And allowing love to meet you there, you develop a sharper emotional radar. You begin to sense whether a man is truly present, here to know you, or just projecting what he's missing in himself. You start to hear the difference between genuine interest and rehearsed charm, between a man who listens to your soul and one who listens only for what he wants to hear, to distinguish between chemistry and emotional compatibility. Because chemistry is easy, a spark, a thrill, a pull, but compatibility, that's about values. That's about safety. That's about how your nervous systems feel when you're together. Whether he loves you because he truly sees you, or because you happen to fit the shape of a story he's been trying to force. When you've done your inner work, when you've grown into your own fullness, you no longer feel flattered by being chosen. You choose back. You don't chase potential, you honor reality.